President's Day.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's just because you've got misaligned, right? If you can realign them, that helps by copy and pasting. But
All right, let's see how everyone did with for all of our stuff here. Let me just make sure everything's going through in the live stream. Nat, give me a thumbs up that you can hear me. Audio should be going through just fine. And in the morning class, I worked out the other audio.
Okay, so here is my walking animation. As you can see, there's a good balance between the contact and passing poses. If we look at the keyframes, if I can pull them up, I tried to follow the example shown on the stream as best I could, but I also wanted to add kind of my own personality, but I may have to wait or wait till we get more into different kinds of walking, because it seems like that's where we're going to be headed next in these lessons. But I really like how it turned out, and I tried to make the hip follow the feet as best I could. It was actually kind of weird imagining how the hips move, because I never really thought about how the hips would interact with the legs during this process, but it makes sense that they kind of shift in the direction of which the legs are going, or which leg is moving. So there's that. Moving on to the new robot arm. Here it is. I didn't do too much, honestly. I didn't think I needed to do the bool tool. It was mostly just adding some extra details onto this. But I think the details really did add a lot to help give it more personality. It still also has the extra motion in it. Yeah. So one thing though that I kind of wish I changed, but it would require me to change the whole model, which would be have the these metal bits actually be hooked up to the next arm, because since it's not actually moving whenever it turns. The only exception to this would be the bottom, which is attached to the appropriate arm. But with that being said, to show off the shoe, as you could see when I booted this up, for some reason it didn't have any of the materials. I'll have to look into that later, but I just downloaded the ones that looked most interesting to me. And to go through how I made it, if we take all these off, the base of it was a leather bag, a reddish brown, mahogany, maroon, whatever, to show off this as the base. There's definitely a better way to do this, but I did the best I could with what I could figure out without spending hours on trying to learn this new program. It was especially finicky with the Alt button. There was that. The shoe, the leather part of the shoe, and the leather strap. A lot of the details were actually in this strap thing. I kind of like how it turned out, and I wanted to recreate this, but I wasn't able to. And then, of course, the dirt, which kind of ages it a little and kind of unifies the whole thing. But that is my shoe and my walk cycle and my arm. Ages it a little and kind of unifies the whole thing. But I kind of like how it turned out, and I wanted to recreate this, but I wasn't able to. And then
Do you guys know what he's talking about? He wanted to recreate this.
Yeah, just because the channel has to exist. Because if you delete all the keyframes, it deletes the channel. So you need to re-establish.
Yeah, I don't know if you're on the live stream, Andre. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about there in terms of what you wanted to recreate. I mean, it seems like you've got the basics of what you wanted to do there. So let us know. Yeah, this is cool. Different design for this. When I said recreate, I meant recreate the bump on the back of the shoe. You mean this over here? Like that? I'm not totally, still not totally clear. I don't know why you weren't getting the materials. I said on Discord to just go ahead and try and re-download again. But yeah, this looks really great, but having the height or the normal, whichever it is, for the base go up through everything else, I think looks a little strange. And so remember putting the topper layer, whichever channel is responsible for the layer stuff, for the height appearance, which could be the height or the normal, you want to put the ones above it in replace so that they can have their own identity there, which I think, especially for the black parts, that's what it needs. The two lines specifically, since those are made from the shading of the object. Okay, I think you mean this going through around here like this? Maybe? Cool. The shoe looks really good. The walk cycle is well done. Let me come back over here. Let me grab the painter file. So what do you guys think of Substance Painter? Oh, it was week 1, right? Yeah. I mean, it's more like Photoshop than the other programs. But once you wrap your mind around the masking workflow, you can do a lot of great stuff there. Did I show you guys the Meet Matte stuff?
Yeah, the competition.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, now I can see the detail. I think I know what you mean. Like having this texture continue onto this part of the shoe, I think is what he's talking about. If we look at the stuff here, that's the base. So the other thing here, this probably goes for everybody, really paying attention to the projection per layer. Especially when you're using the default or the automatic UV unwrapping, which is really great, right? In that that's a whole step of modeling, which can really, especially if you're not comfortable with it, eat a huge chunk of time. And if it doesn't need to be super optimized, a lot of times what comes out of the automatic UV unwrapping is pretty good, especially if you've done a decent job modeling, right? I mean, if you haven't done a decent job modeling, then all bets are off. But you can see how how with one shoe here, it unwrapped it into this singular island, right? I guess this is like the top of the boot and then everything else is around there. And so you can see like the flow of the leather is like pulled down in that direction because of the way the distortion is happening here in the UV map. And so probably changing this to triplanar then equally distributes the leather pattern throughout the entire shape. Is that clear, the difference between the two? Gavin, you get it? Yeah, okay. Right, so again, it's coming from here, here, and there, all 6 sides. So this is another, the reason we can use the automatic unwrapping is because we have the triplanar projection. In order to get, if you were only able to use UV projection like this, then you would need to be actively manipulating the UVs to make sure the grain of the leather flowed in the correct direction, right? Which can be, difficult to manage. But by having this, which sort of reprojects it in 3D space, you see that now it looks good over here. It looks distorted over here. But that's okay. Like, it has to be one or the other, right? The distortion has to exist somewhere. It's either going to be here or it's going to be there. In a perfect world, your UVs are laid out really evenly so that you get minimal distortion in both. But the amount of distortion we're talking about, especially for like 2,000 pixels on an entire boot, is, fine, minimal here, right? So we're fine. Okay, and then this is on top. Let's see, on the, so the pattern here, is this on the normal? No, it's on the height. Okay, so everything's on the height, on the base, and then the next layer up has height information, and if we wanted to totally cover that up, right? So I think Andre had it in add, and so the bumpiness of whatever this red is combined with the bumpiness of the leather. If you want it to be replaced by so that it's totally not, the leather doesn't come through at all, we take this in the height and we change it to replace, right? And so now this is totally its own thing. And so you could make that more or less exaggerated. You kind of got this rough hedge here, but I think that gets covered up by this. Let's see if this is the same thing. So the rubber here, yeah, you can see that the leather's coming through again there. But this one's a little bit more complicated because it's a smart folder or smart material, or at least a folder with a bunch of things. So that's just the wear. This is the fabric. And so this is the thing that you would want to put into replace. And I think you need to go up the chain. When you put it in a folder, I'm trying to remember how this works. The top level of the folder would override the blend modes below. There we go, right? See how that worked? So actually, you wouldn't need to adjust these blend modes. Just go back up to the very top of the chain and put that height in replace. And now that's completely on its own there, right? Speaking through the other stuff. And then this. So check your version of Substance Painter, Andre. I'm I'm on the most recent one here at school, 10.1.2. But you're using stuff that was in a folder. And so, like I said, it's the very top level of the folder that's going to matter there. But good paint layer. And yeah, the dirt works. But now it doesn't seem like this is printed on top of the leather. It seems separate from that over there. The only other thing that stuck out, or no, now that we have that fixed, that edge looks better over there. Cool. Yeah, you even did the tread. Nice. So that really helps to make it all look like it was made of different materials, right? Versus having the leather height bleed through to, you know, all of the other layers that are in there. Cool. Here's Melissa's.
Hello, here is my animation for the walk cycle. The contact pose would be when the foot touches the ground here. And then the passing pose is when the feet pass each other. And for the hips, I did the up and down. The highest point is kind of here when the shoe is on the ground and starting to go back because that's like when the most weight is on it. And then the hips are at the lowest point, kind of almost at the contact point. And then I added a rotation to the hips to go this way on the Z in this case, and this way in this case was the X. And yeah, so that's that. Here's the robot arm. One issue that I had was when I joined, trying to remember how to move things. When I joined these two pieces, the shading got all weird, and I already added the bevel to them and I applied it. And I don't have a version from before I applied them. But so I added an extra bevel and that kind of fixes the shading error. So is there a way to do it without adding an extra bevel? Because that does add just a little bit more geometry on the edges. And that I did that with this one as well. But yeah, here's the wireframe. And then for the boot, I did a leather from the community tab, and then I added actually another leather from in here underneath just for the height information. And I played around with the color a little bit and the noise. And then I did the bootstrap. I did some linen on the inside, and I painted the outside of the strap brown. The sole is like this plasticky material, and I added some stripes in the height. And then for the details, I did all these panels in sections for the height. So I did there's one here in the back, the front and back, and then there's the side one, and then there's like a little border around, and then I added stitches to that. And then there's also this like mesh panel. Sorry. And then dirt, I added anchor points to all the panels and the horizontal stripes so that the dirt would get on those little ambient occlusion spaces. So this is without all of the layers and with, and that's it. Okay.
Yeah, shoe looks awesome. So this, right, and this is another example of the value proposition of Substance Painter here, right? Like this kind of detailing, unless we were going to get really, really, really close to the shoe, right? This allows you to really freely paint these kind of details onto the object without having to worry so much about, the modeling can be much simpler, and then all of the detail is in the texturing, right? And that workflow is the most efficient one. That's the way the games are designed to work, where a lot of things are very, very, very simple pieces of topology, and then the detailing in the materials is what really makes it work. Yeah, this one looks really good. Using the anchor points is great for the dirt, like we talked about, so it gets into those spots. Yeah, it looks really great. Super work putting the felt on the inside. It's really great touch. The only other thing would be if we look at the maybe this, it's a great job. And the only thing that stuck out here was like the alignment of the weave on something like this, right? Would be kind of, probably would line up with this direction, right? And that's where you could, since that part, which is here, is laid out fairly straight in the UV here, right? It's not aligned perfectly up and down, left and right, but the part itself is relatively straight. And so for the UV projection, which means it's just simply overlaid into this space, is you could correct this or tweak it by just rotating. And so you could just rotate that into, right? Now you see that this aligns with that, right? And so now that tweed pattern perfectly aligns going across there. Super tiny detail, but I think it's a good example of what we're talking about. Yeah, and the only thing that struck me here is I thought these were like maybe a little bit too wide. I don't know. Yeah, so that layer, she has it in triplanar projection, so that's a really easy fix in terms of just sort of dialing that in. And maybe it's the default, being conservative with the height stuff. So there's two ways. Melissa did the right thing and used the height here in the levels. And so decreasing the output, which is the output range here, by moving these two closer together would decrease the height effect. But you see she's already done that fairly well. And so the other thing you can do, which is just sort of like more math on top of it, is just adjust the general level of the height here. Right, so think of this as like the opacity of the height channel. And so you could grab this and just dial in a little bit less of it, right? Does this result in something? It's pretty much the same as doing this and moving these two closer together, but you can see, having both is probably a good idea here. Keeping them around the middle, and then, use this as just sort of your general fade in, fade out. And just like I think all the programs work like this, don't they? If we hold down Shift, while we're dialing in the parameter, just like in Blender. It'll make the slider move less, so you can make more subtle incremental changes to that. But looks really, really good. Here's Alicia's and Natalie and Kai.
Hello, this is my walking animation. A pass pose is when the foot that is passing passing the foot that is attached to the ground. A contact pose is when the foot makes contact to the ground, usually with the heel. How I animated the hip is I adjusted the height based off of where it was in the walk cycle. It should be lowest when the front foot is all the way on the ground and the back foot is about to lift off the ground. And then shortly after the pass pose is when it's at the height. And then I adjusted the rotation of the Y and the Z based off of the foot that is in front. Then I offset it by 7 frames to make it seem like the legs are leading the hip. Next is my redesign for my robot arm. Let's play a little bit more. Okay, switch. So I use the bool tool a lot to give it a more well-defined shape. I have this little hollow space in the back that I made using the bool tool, the same in the front. I made this hollow using a bool tool. I made this hollow using the bool tool. I gave this definition and this definition using the bool tool. And I'm sure I used it somewhere for the claws, but I do not remember. Then last but not least is the shoe. It is based off of my wife's shoe from when we got married. I have a base shoe layer just to give it some little bit of color and some shine. Then there's this heel patch on the back. Which just raised to give it a little definition. Then this ankle patch vertical here. And then front patch is really the entire back of the shoe, but it does come together with these little patch parts in the front. And I raised the height on those to give it that definition. Next I have the rubber bottom. And then for the zipper, I have the backing for it. There's a little black fabric. I have the zipper, and then the zipper head itself. For stitching, there's 2 different kinds of stitching. There's the big yellow, but there's also these little small ones right here. Some of them are double stitched there. In the back, these are all double stitched. It was a pain. After the stitching, I have the grommets that the shoelaces are going into, and then the shoelaces. And then I have 2 layers of dirt going on here. A little more general one, this is using the Smart. And then the dirt, this was using a brush to give it that little specific to kind of little match this a little better. So that is my shoe. Questions for the robot. I tried attaching an armature to it. And it did not like me at all and would not work. So any help there if we're supposed to do that, or if we are allowed to just keep on adjusting the objects in object mode.
Yeah, we're in FK mode here, so using the armature in FK is kind of a lateral move, right? Like in this instance, where we're not really gaining anything. If we were to make the robot arm IK, then that would be worth doing in that
Don't
instance.
need to use an armature for FK? Is what you're
I mean, not necessarily, no. Like, we don't have to in this instance because these are separate mesh objects, right? If we want to do the tentacle in FK, we need the bones to deform it because there's only one mesh object,
Yeah.
right? So,
Okay.
um,
Thank you.
yep. So, yeah, that looks great. I forgot. Yeah, so that looks really good. There was only something I saw, like perhaps the inner beveling over there. But let me pull up Melissa's real quick because I did want to do that. She had to add that extra bevel to fix the shading. And if it's already beveled, we should be able to do that differently. Let's see. It's this part, right? And so without this, let's see. Did you already bake in the extra bevel? Okay, there we go. Okay, well this one is not beveled. And so we would definitely want that one. The one below it here, the blue one, am I looking at one that's on? No, I'm not. What am I looking at? That part. I thought I clicked on this guy. There we go. Okay, so this is what we're dealing with. Yeah, this is the extra bevel. Okay, so this part here, this has it doesn't have any bevel applied. This is the version, it was previously beveled and the bevel has been applied, and so it's like baked into the geometry at this point. And so if you go to shade smooth on this, then the shading gets all weird, especially here, right? Which we see when you just apply the default shading to that's in the other object. There we go. Shade flat, shade smooth, shade auto smooth. So shade flat or shade smooth is just a binary shading. Shade auto smooth adds the smooth by angle modifier to the mesh, which then allows you to sort of dial in what angle would need to be, what the angle needs to be in order to start to get the smooth shading. And so if this gets too high, then it's the equivalent of just adding shade smooth and having the shading kind of obliterate the shape of things. If I take this the whole way down really, really low, it's pretty much the same as shade flat, because now we don't even get the shading on the cylinder here, right? And so this lets you, across the entire mesh, sort of dial it in to where you would want it so that we would get just enough. But you can end up in situations like this where we're still not able to find like this is applied to everything, right? And so I'd like this to look like that, but then this looks bad. If I dial it up, then this looks good, but then this has gotten all junky. So the other thing that we can do here is manage this on an edge by edge basis. And so if we go to edge mode and select edges, for instance, here, I'm not sure we'll find the loop. Okay, we got a loop there. We can make an edge, a shading break here, and in Blender, that is the mark sharp, right? And so if you mark that edge as being sharp, it'll give you a shading break, I think regardless. Let's test that, right? So I'll mark that sharp. I'll tab back out. I'll turn this off and turn it back on shade smooth. And yeah, we're getting like a clear shading break there. If we tab back in, we're on shade smooth now. So if we started to specifically grab different corners, mark sharp, we could fix some of these issues. The cylinder could be cleaned up. If there's internal geometry on the end of the cylinder, then that tends to be an issue. Let's look at that. So if I grab this one and then Control L to grab all the attached ones, and then delete the face on both sides, not the edges, or not the vertices, just the face. There we go. Then Control L, smooth that back so I can see what I'm doing. If I look at it this way, that shading should be less weird. So we can keep the this smooth and then choose exactly where we want to have the break here. I mean, the beveling got a little weird there, so that's maybe going to be an issue. If we shade a little bit smoother there, that helps keep these flat, but that keeps that nice there. So mark sharp allows you to have like the most control. So in terms of like the basic rule of thumb here, right? It starts flat. In general, unless you're making like a low poly art piece, we don't want this, right? And so the first level is just shade smooth. But if you do that and there's not enough control, then I would use shade auto smooth. That way you can dial in the angle for the entire thing. If that's still unsatisfactory, then you can go in there and mark each individual edge sharp in order to specifically control it over the entire course of the topology. Does that make sense? Most of the time, right, we got something that's kind of faceted, we hit shade smooth, and that's the end of the story. But sometimes you're going to need to have more control than that, especially in these sort of instances where you have this very, very more detailed um, topology there, particularly hard surface stuff. Cool. Here is Nat's.
Sorry, keep this is like my fourth time doing this video because I keep forgetting to do the one thing. Hopefully, I remember this time. I keep forgetting to show the wireframe on my my arm. But here's my flock cycle. The contact poses poses are when the heel is touching the ground, and then the passing is when it's shifting the weight of one foot to another for the character. So that's the contact that his heel is hitting right there, and the passing is right right there-ish. Yeah, I believe so. Sorry. And then um I made my hip a little like kind of like bouncy, but I get like looking back on it, maybe it doesn't look that. It looks more like a strut, like someone's doing like that kind of. But maybe I'll prove on it maybe by making it kind of like bounce a bit more like up forward and everything. I did want to say I didn't do the shoes the way you did. Like I did model it similar to yours. I was gonna change things, but I keep forgetting that it is okay to do that. I forgot. So maybe I'll change it next by next week. I not auto. I didn't auto unwrap mine. I UV unwrapped it myself because the auto unwrap was giving me grief for some reason. Why don't you stop? Come on, buddy. And then yeah, also same for the arm. I did not auto unwrap that. I did it myself. Here's my arm. Let me just do this first before I forget. It's a lot of beveling. That's what it really is. Just turn that all off. I didn't want to do anything like change it too much from what it was already. Oops, not that guy. That guy. Come on. Could have just, like control and get that like turned off. But yeah, like nothing like too crazy about it. I didn't want to like do something like way overboard with mine. Um, I really liked how it was the first place. Did have lots of fun doing like those insets and like extruding them out. I don't know why those are very fun for me to do. Let me show it again in here. Wow, real different. There we go. I tried giving them a lot of like beat up features. It has sorry the robot arm a lot of different like scratches in here and there. Maybe it was a pro like machine arm wrestler who does. Even though its arm can't really twist that way, but it'll be fine. But I did use the wool tool for here and then for the knuckles, I guess you can say for right here. I like whenever like robots or like anything metal has that kind of like like groove in it. And then, sorry, I have like written down just to make sure I don't miss anything. And then my shoes, of course, this isn't open. That's my bad. I close it again. Um, Come on, buddy. Okay. The laces are horrible. I'm sorry. I could have probably could have turned up the height a little bit more. I did also separate them by thingies right here. Not thingies, you know what I mean, layers and materials and everything. Let me see. Thing. I forgot. It's because of this. I didn't put that filter on there. I'm a goof. Excuse me. I'll fix that later. Sorry. I just really try to make it a really like dirty like work shoe, which I think kind of like got the point across. You can also see these right here. The bottom made it real devil. Real dirty down here. Maybe if I did. Oh, never mind. Put that back up there. Get over it. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Huh. I wasn't doing that earlier. There we go. But yeah, sorry I keep doing this video because I'm just really slow on this. Um, shoe has a lot of different things. The laces are different because I made them different colors. We can kind of tell what's going on a bit easier to like tell like which shoelaces on top of what. Call that lacing because I forgot what these are called. Oops, bald without it. Then the stitches that I have right here. This is a fill layer. I actually don't know what they're called. This maybe like undershoe. I don't know. It's just supposed to like kind of give it like a fake like sense of like height for this. But I just made this lower technically. And just a bunch of dirt. Then this edge that thing has right here. This also has height on it. That's the whole color of the shoe. Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed doing this. It was just a little difficult with that some things here and there. My zipper. Sorry. Two of them. Yeah, I enjoy doing this. I'll probably change it for this can have a little bit more of a heel to make it less squared. I've noticed it's very squared. Sorry. Yeah, that should probably be everything. Thank you.
Yeah, looks really good, Nat. Alicia, did you put height on your laces that you went through?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought like yours stuck out a little bit more than Nat's here. I think part of it may be I'm trying to operate this like it's the program. It's just a video. Like the direction of this. And then, yeah, like the meat mat stuff, you can push this stuff to make the height really work. But, I mean, making a bow come out of the shoe is like not, impossible, really. Okay, that looks really great. The only other thing with the shoes, with the laces, God, we had done this a couple semesters ago. I'm trying to remember what the formula was to really make that pop. Let me think about it. If you blur the height, but there's that newish filter that's like blur inside, blur outside. Let me look at the next one. Think about that for a second. But to make them really look, tubular across the top.
I feel like initially, before I added the shoes on, I was happier with it being a little bit more loose and cartoony, especially with the way I animated the hips being very bouncy, kind of jovial. Now, with the boots, it kind of reminds me of like, almost feels like trot or something. It definitely feels a little off with the boots. And I wonder if maybe that'll just take animating the toe bends and all that, and maybe also just de-exaggerating some aspects of it. Here's my redesigned robot arm. Here's the wireframe. Obviously, it's more of an arm compared to what I had before. So that's kind of the biggest part of it that got redesigned. And then for the bowl tool, I mostly used it to make hinges, specifically in like the main arm segment and for the claws. Here's my shoe, and I'm starting off with the base layer. It's just some basic leather material, and then I copied that material and made some accents in black on the shoe. And then I started adding some layers for building up like grime and stuff. So this is just like a dust layer, more dust, adjusting some of the colors. And then here's the first mud layer. And then I decided I felt like it looked more like a combat boot. So I decided to draw from the military fabric that I had. More dirt, this one trying to cover the whole thing. And then, yeah, pretty much just building up and playing around with smart materials, trying to get a very grungy look to these boots.
Yeah, great. So Kai's laces there are actual geo, so that obviously works for that amount of laces. I mean, when would you want them to be geo, and when would you want them to be in the texture? You know, it would just depend how close we see those details in the actual frame. We went over that, right? Size in frame equals amount of detail. And
hey everybody, I can't be on camera today because I'm using a different camera or a different computer, but so here we go.
Did something happen to your other computer?
No, I usually use my Mac with the webcam, but it can't run like Substance Painter on there and stuff.
Oh, okay.
I just use my PC instead.
I mean, does it just run slow or does it not run at all?
It's an old MacBook Air.
Oh, okay,
It will
yeah.
crash.
Yeah, that's not... Okay, but you do have another machine with beefier hardware?
Yeah. First, let's look at my walk cycle here. Pretty good. The process for this was pretty basic. It just kind of included blocking out those key poses, which we can see here. Let's see. It mainly just begins with extended out when, because you start with one shoe and then you just duplicate it, but for the first shoe you got the contact, it goes down, hits the ground, moves back, slowly goes back. This is when it starts getting raised, and then this is boom, that's where that's the in between, right between its next step, and because it's going up like that, we then move the hip up as well with it. As you can see here, the hip goes up and down with the steps, and it also goes sideways based on which shoe is placing its step to. Yeah, the hips were pretty easy. I just followed along with the tutorial, really. I probably made them a little too high up here, but it's okay. And then, so, let's see, show your redesigned robot arm. So my robot arm, this is the final render of my robot arm. So, and I can pull it up here actually. So with this, I definitely went for a different approach. I wanted to kind of I wanted to do like a toy kind of feeling. So I went with bright blue colors, and then with this, it was just playing with the booleans, trying to figure out interesting things I could do. I came up with this idea of having like kind of ridges here and then these circles, just patterns, and I think like having basic geometry kind of like this, while also having, you know, little indents, like indenting on the circles, creates kind of a fun plastic toy feel, which is what I was going for, especially with the color scheme here. And then for the shoe I made, so in Substance Painter here, I went for I modeled this a little bit based on my Nike shoes I wear sometimes, and basically with the layers here. First, I just found a good, like a synthetic kind of fiber leather. I forget what it is. It's like fabric, synthetic dots for the main texture here, and then for the white on the bottom, I used a plastic area, and I selected the faces on the bottom and just painted on there with a mask, painted on the parts that I wanted to show.
These look really good. The thing that sticks out is like the distortion of the pattern across it, right? And so how would you fix that now?
We would change how it unwraps on the thing.
Well, I mean, yeah, you could unwrap it or change the projection. Yeah, the triplanar projection, right? Yeah, because that's definitely like the indents in the fabric are like condensed here and not there.
And then for the laces, I just found a lace texture on here, and I tried my best to paint it straight on. It probably, from far away it looks all right. It could have been better, but I wanted to just do something.
Yeah, in the Blender view, it looked great. Like up close, yeah, it doesn't hold up. But you can waste a lot of time doing that kind of stuff, right? Where you're like, oh, I need to, but then you put it in the final thing, and no one's going to even notice, right? If I saw a graph of like how much time I've worked on stuff that people never even noticed, like it would be an upsetting graph tally of how much time.
And I think it actually looks all right considering what I had to do for it.
Okay, great. So you didn't draw the laces individually. You just used that. You blew that lace brush way up and then did that on the front of the shoe. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that works. Like those more complicated brushes, those are all things that are made in Substance Designer, which is the super powerful but somewhat complicated way to design brushes or substances themselves, or smart materials, but it's totally like a nodal interface for all of those things, right? When we're done here, I'll show everybody Substance Sampler real quick, because that's another program you can use to make your own substances that then you can just drag into Substance Painter. But cool design on the robot arm. I like that. It's definitely more playful than some of the other designs, which are also good.
Hello, this is my video for design. So first up, you can see my and it is brand new edition.
That may have been me. Hold on. Are you using a different mic or something? It's usually fine.
It's still the same mic. I even adjusted it so it'd be not as loud, and still it's
For design. So first up, you can see my and it is brand new edition that I've now done the crazy with the bowl and then some extruded parts to make it more cool looking, honestly. And I made sure that I used the bevel and the hardened normals so it has that you guys can.
Okay, well just talk us through what's.
okay. So basically, what I'm showing off is that I remembered this time to use the correct bevel and the hard lighting surface thing, and I went nuts with the bool tool a little bit, as you can see with the crazy ridges and indents and stuff. And basically, I've just dubbed it the ant robot because it kind of looks like an ant head.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to be switching over to the walk cycle boots. Oops. Oh, first my boots, which are,
He's got sparkly.
yes. So I kind of went a little nuts with the sparkle boots. I thought I'd play into the joke that, yes, me doing the glitter sparkle sequin boots. also, since everyone else was doing leather, I kind of wanted to have a different variety, so I did more of a cartoony, sparkle unicorn boot. And so, I'm very bad at this.
No, you're filling us in.
So I went with more like a Pac-Man-like looking boot, or as what some people know as that one designer boot that's like a few $1,000s.
Is that what you were referring?
Yeah.
Like these are real. So these are like
It's
real.
real
Like you can buy this.
And they're red, and they're like, how much are they? 3, 4, 5 grand?
Insane.
It's like stupid for like a stupid cartoon looking boot. They're
But it looks like this. Like it's
yes,
like.
exactly like
So
that.
you're like modeling well to reference. It's just that the actual shoe itself is a cylinder.
Like, watching the model, I had like 5 different references just in the corner. Well, I'm like,
Who's the designer for these things?
no idea.
You could probably Google like expensive cartoon.
Yeah, just look up cartoon.
Expensive cartoon boot.
You'll see them pretty much immediately. There it is. How much is it?
Mischief. Mischief. Okay. All right. I feel like we're gonna click on something that I don't have come in the live stream.
Wait, so I modeled it after that, but made them sparkly and a bit more rounded and wide, more cartoony looking than it being realistic.
Uh huh.
I have at the bottom is like a rubber texture. Kind of can see that.
Yeah.
And then I have the zipper in the back and the little zip part. That was kind of fun trying to get looking straight. I have not a very steady hand. But
Well, for a straight line, you just need to click, hold down Shift, and click again. That'll make a straight line. Yeah. Regardless of where you're drawing, or whether you're drawing in the mask or drawing with the paintbrush, whatever.
and then kind of showing off. I tried to convert it into Blender, but for some reason it won't with the sparkles.
So it was this class where we discovered and used the USD export, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, where then we just drag it in and everything works and it's great,
That's what I
right?
did, and
But so you did that, but you didn't get the sparkles. Okay, so
either the sparkles or the soles of the feet for some reason. It just gave me shiny purple. And I like even redid the boots, repainted
yeah,
them
like
completely and tried.
not getting the sparkles doesn't seem too strange. Like that may be like a different thing, but the fact it didn't do the rubber on the bottom seems weird. Like it
Yeah,
should
the
have.
rubber and the zipper just did not decide to come along. And they left the sparkles and just gave me the purple and the metallic-ness of the sparkles, just not my sparkles. And it even had some of its texture on it too, of the bumps where it had like the weird glitter jitter, but it don't make me. And I even like tried messing around with it, but yeah. I tried adding extra things, taking away things.
Oh, so you did change this?
Yeah, I changed it. Not that one. That one's just a re-throw in and trying to figure out what I'm doing.
It's not showing me the textures.
Love it for that.
Oh, this is that thing where if it's
Lori's a hater.
no, if you because did you do package resources? Yeah, I think you did, but
You did not transfer over.
no, it's a Blender thing. Like you need to like explicitly extract. I just want to actually see the JPEG, but it's wrapped up in the file. All right. Well, I have it there. I'll check it out at home and see if I get this same thing. Because some other people did some intricate things that came through, so there's got to be some issue there.
Yeah,
You didn't check any extra boxes on the USD import?
No.
Okay.
I can go back to make sure there's nothing extra that I missed, but I haven't clicked anything. But yeah, it just did not like me for some reason. And then that's pretty much me. The rest of it is me talking about that and then the walk cycles.
Okay, the walk cycle looks good. Well, I'll try and figure out why your boot would be different. I'm not sure.
I'm just your problem child. I'm always the one that's like, why don't it work? They don't like me.
Logan, did you change your brand colors?
No, I just had it like that.
Oh, okay. I thought it was bluer for some reason. I don't know.
Today I have a walk cycle, a revision of my robot arm, and a new shoe design that I painted using Substance Painter. Here's my walk cycle. I made sure the feet glided along the ground nicely, and for the hips to match the movement of each foot. Now you may ask, what is considered the contact and passing pose for feet in a walk cycle? Right here we have the contact, then the passing pose, contact, passing pose, strike, pass, on and on. For the hips, I made sure they bounded up when one foot passed the other and down when the foot hit the ground. Up, down, up, down, up, down. After changing its position, I followed up by changing the rotation to fit the feet's position. The Z rotation rotates to fit the feet's position, as you can see, and the Y rotation rotates based on the foot's height. With my walk cycle out of the way, here is my refined robot arm. To fit the Boolean cutters, I rebuilt the model. Here, I gave the cylinder joints gear-shaped cuts, and I added square grooves to the cylinder's arms that grow deeper as they go higher, also using the Boole Tools cutting techniques. Here's a render for a better look. It's a little hard to see, but I made some additions to it. I also added a half circle to the robot and gave grooves to the smaller cylinders near the top using loop cuts. Oh yeah, here's the wireframe. I based this off a robot arm design I made in my AVC 184 class. Now, onto the shoes. I started by making my shoe in my walk breakdown project and gave it a unique design. As you can see, it looks a little unconventional. I based this design off a Sonic character design I made, where the shoes have rigid grooves on the soles, dark material on the base, crystal rings, and shoe cuffs that flare out the higher they get. Now, I did my best to give it a realistic design through Substance Painter, and I'm pretty satisfied with how it looks right now. Here's how it looks in full, but I'm going to remove all these real quick to show the changes that I've made. The first layer, labeled Shoe Base, gives the shoe a fabric pattern appearance. The Shoe Groove Spots layer gives the shoe dark spots in the appearance of leather. The crystal layer gives the rings a shiny crystalline texture based on metals like aluminum. Similar to the shoe base, the shoe cuffs layer gives the fabric-like texture but with noticeable creases. The shoe grooves layer only gives notable changes in height, made to mimic the shoe's grooves from the original drawings. Finally, the shoe soles layer covers up the excess materials with its own material, also based on fabric. Now, I don't have any other questions for this assignment, but I'll make sure to review the videos again if I do. Have a good night, everyone.
Awesome. Looks great. So that's your own like character that you would insert into the Sonic universe, or is that like a Sonic person or character?
It's like a Sonic character that I made that I based off of myself.
Yeah, so you design a character. It's just like, you know, if they're making the next Sonic game, whatever it's called, like that would be a character that they would put in it.
I didn't really like make it with like
Right. But I'm trying to like it's not it's not an existing Sonic character. Okay. All right. Yeah. So like the laces here with this, to be more like your reference. Let's see here. So the same thing as with Gavin's, like to make this look uniform, switching that to triplanar should do that if I have the right layer. I don't have the right layer. Okay, this one. If this one goes to triplanar. Did you paint this pattern into the mask? Yeah, because it's on this layer, but if I change the projection of the layer, nothing changes, which is strange. I'm trying to see it. What does the mask look like on this layer? Oh! Okay, so you put this into the mask here. So that works. It probably isn't the way, if you're going to do it again, I probably wouldn't do it this way because we can't change the projection of the mask pattern, right? So you could, like, this is a clever way to do it, but just probably not the most flexible way to do it. Because if you just fill the whole shoe with that pattern in the mask in UV space, that in this instance it ends up being distorted here in 3D space, and we can't make an adjustment for that, as opposed to like if we had some other fabric pattern of some kind. Like just this denim, I guess, if I put this in here. Right, then if I change the projection, it actually reorients so that it's equidistant over here. Does that make sense? Yeah, so like what you did works, but that's probably not the best way to go about doing that. Like yeah.
Like it doesn't break the mask, but it like makes it like it finalizes the like what I have, right?
Okay, and then you painted the grooves with a paint layer, painting height here, right? So in this case, I think you got the right idea. I might, again, do that slightly differently, and then this will give us a chance to test something, actually. So if we created a new fill layer with just height information, and we pumped it up, and then we painted that with just the regular brush, right? So there, we're kind of doing the opposite thing. We're pulling it up, right? So if we just do one of these. Okay, kind of like that. So we did it with the soft brush. We can, even if I turn this up more, right, in the height channel here, like that, there's kind of a limit. And the way the brush works, we always get this flat part up top here. And so one way to go about this is to blur. Let's try blurring the height. Well, we don't blur the height, we blur the mask. And so if I come in and select the mask and put a filter on it and go to blur, just regular blur. Now if I start to blur this, you see I can make it like a, yeah, like, well, just rounder, right? So it doesn't get that flat top there. Then there's this other issue here that we exported the USD, right? And so this is the basic thing I was thinking of earlier for more pronounced laces, right? So that they would be like rounder, not so much just up and flat. And so we can dial that in here with the height, and we can massage that a little bit more if we were to add a levels after the blur. Yeah. And so now you can see if we were to move this. There we go. Right, by the order here matters. So I blurred first, then I had levels, and I'm able to end up with, you know, this very round height effect, right? Right. So this, we're going to make it super puffy here, but this would work for laces too, right? And so, and it's in the mask. So now that I have that, and the effect is doing the whole thing. And so if I just paint more of it, I get all of that, you know, quote unquote, for free. Like I can, as long as I don't like run it all together there, you can see I can do that. Then the other thing that we didn't do before is that, you know, if these were totally featured in the system here, then we might want more detail on them. And a lot of the super crazy effects you saw in the meat matte stuff was not only using height and normal, but displacement. We were actually displacing the geometry of the mesh. And so in the shader settings, shader settings at the bottom here, displacement I think is on by default now, but it's not actually moving any of this. And so if you were to definitely hold down Shift and start to dial this in, you see that then we're starting to actually displace the mesh. It looks really cruddy because displacement depends on subdivision. Right. Because we're out of this is where we bridge between texturing and modeling, right? In that we're able to actually displace the mesh. But when we're modeling, we're trying to be conservative with our number of vertices, right? Whereas in order for a displacement, you're kind of just converting pixels into points, right? Or at least that's what you want to do in order to have smooth displacement. And so there's two things here, displacement and then tessellation, which is going to essentially subdivide the mesh. And so if you turn that up, you can see that when we massage the scale here, getting closer to what, right? Those tubes that you had on the shoe in the sketch, right? This is more like the sketch, right? Right now you can paint those onto the shoe, right? Which would the levels here, you depending on how close things are together, you'd have to play with the levels a little bit. But the only part here that we need to look at is so it's the playing with the levels after the blur, because let me just confirm that I'm correct here. Yeah, if you put the blur after, it's just obliterating the levels, and so you want the levers after the blur. This is another trick that you can use in After Effects for I'll come back to it later. Anyways, but the issue is this requires displacement. Would this show up by default in Blender? And let's find out. File, export resources. Because we can use or export textures with USD, PNG, or what do we use? PBR, metallic roughness. Is that what I said last time? Okay. Then here, new folder, Sonic Boots, and export. And then over here, if we brought this in, Sonic Boots. There they are. Just throw a sunlight in so we can see what we're doing. Okay, it's coming through, but it's not doing displacement. In the shading, there's the giant boots. Right, so the effect is there, but it's not actually displacing the geometry. So the displacement here, which I believe, okay, so this part, the fact that we drug in the USD and it just worked, like that's great, but it's more complicated than that. And like in for whatever reason, in Autumn's example, it didn't work. And here, they're not hooking up displacement by default. And so our elation at having it, quote unquote, just work before was good. But if we want to make sure we have the displacement here, what textures did it give us by default? Color, metallic, roughness. It's weird that it puts the UV over there. Okay. Okay, so there it is. We might be able to do this. Just add displacement and grab the normal map information and run it into displacement. And things are weird. We need to, all the stuff I've been telling you about normal maps is just kind of like the top level of this. There's different ways to record the data that's in a normal map, and just be aware of that and pay attention to it, right? So there's two different ways to do it. There's tangent space, and then there's object space, and then there's further variations in like how you're storing the data in that space. It can be a whole thing. But I turned it on, and now it looks weird. And so I can tell that this was in tangent space. By default, the displacement thing is an object space. I don't have tangent space over here. We may not be able to do this with this part. Let's see if I do this. That's better. And so now, can we actually displace this with the scale? It's working, but remember how we had that subdivision slider in Substance Painter to subdivide the mesh to get this to work? You can't subdivide the mesh in the shader settings in Blender, but we can subdivide it with a modifier. And you would say, just go to the sub-D modifier, right? Because that's exactly what I need to do. That's correct. But in Blender, the multi-resolution modifier is like a different way of calculating the subdivision, which in a lot of instances is more efficient. It's doing the same thing. And so I'm going to throw that on the boot to see if we get any effects. Multi-resolution. And then I'll just go to simple subdivide. And if we start to dial this up, ugh. That's kind of what we want. Still not pulling it out. We might need another map there. I'll have to see what the best way is to convert that. But it allows us to like sort of like, I don't know, do extra modeling in the displacement channel for what we have there in order to make like those kind of tubes or any of that kind of stuff. But the other option is that we could export this as a mesh with a displacement baked in, but I don't think that is in the export textures. USD, that's fine. If we go to export mesh just by itself, yeah. So here we go. With displacement, export, shoes, there. I didn't see where I sent it. Where did I send it? File, export mesh, with displacement. So this ended up a little rough here because we don't have the other textures to smooth it out. But if you look at it, here's what we get back, right? So it took what we did in the displacement and actually baked it into a different mesh, right? Now this would be pretty much, you know, if you're doing some sort of still or something like that, and obviously this is not going to a game or something like that. Although, I'm not sure, maybe we'll use this a little bit later, but if you're following any of the game engine stuff, like what the current state of the art is in Unreal Engine. You guys play any games made with Unreal Engine? Like, well, it's Fortnite. What else? I'm only thinking of like really simple looking games. You know, they've been emphasizing using photogrammetry to bring in 3D objects rather than modeling them by, you know, quote unquote, by hand. And so these are captured with like sort of mashing together a bunch of photos. And so, yeah, this is what I was looking at. The underlying mesh of these things is super heavy. What would previously be written off as like not usable in game, right? But the technology that sort of like downsizes the number of polygons dynamically throughout the system allows this kind of stuff to start happening now. So like that kind of mesh, these kind of, you know, more less face-centered techniques for figuring out how many polygons are in something or trying to manage the number of polygons in something. Maybe, especially for you guys in 5 years, maybe even faster, this isn't even an issue, right? That everything can be made super heavy, meaning that it has like a really, really high amount of detail, but the, right, this visualization here is like showing you how it's updating the density of the polygons per object in real time during the render, right, per frame. And so this is allowing for things to have a ton of detail, and it runs, you know, even currently runs really fast. So something like this may not be totally out of bounds, really, even for real time in the very, very, very near future. Does that make sense, what I'm saying here? Right? So right now it's like proprietary technology for Unreal Engine, but you know, that's happening everywhere. Okay, just real quick. Here's Efren.
All right. Hello, my name is Efren Tena. This is this week's assignment for a walking cycle, redesign of the robot arm, and the boots design and substance painting. So I'm gonna start off with the walk cycle. This is my little walk cycle right here. Little exaggerated walk cycle. Now it dips around, the hips play from side to side, kind of dip up and down too. Got that. There's a little bit of slippage here. I could probably use a little bit of work on the timing right here, or maybe just make it so the animation doesn't like really slide the foot back as much, so that way it doesn't look like it's slipping. But that is my walk cycle right here. I basically just repeat the frames of each foot, shift it off the side. This one right here, I have it set up so it's a little bit delayed from when the foot is exactly below, but not too delayed too, but have that set up, you know, like I said, got the little exaggeration bit, so it's from flat to silent, you know. Yep, well, kind of passed it, there you go. Got that. What's up, dog? Alright, and let me move on to the next part of the project, which is the robot arm. Now this is actually the part I spent the most amount of time on. Just because I couldn't really figure out how I wanted to redesign the robot arm. But, you know, kind of went with like this mechanical steampunkish look. I did a lot of work on the hard surface remodeling, and kind of got around to this. Like I said, like a more like steampunkish look. You know, I got it all rigged up right here. Can move the base right here, move along. Can move this part right here, from side to side. This side right here too, and then the hand itself kind of moves on its own too. This parts can move together or move on their own too, and they have a little slit right here in the middle, so that way they don't like phase through each other. But yeah, I have this set up. This is my new robot arm design. Like I said, this part I spent most time on, but I actually really like how this came out. This actually came out looking really nice. Yeah. And now for the next part is the boots. Yes. So this right here are the boots that I designed. Just some basic boot-like shape. You know, I went with like a leather steel toe shoe. That's why I have kind of the steel toe bit right here. Some little stitching around the side, just like show like, you know, the leather is supposed to like be attached to that part. From there, just got leather on the rest of the rubber soles. Although I could probably use a better rubber for that, and like but like also like a little like a little overlay at the top. Some boots have that, and decided to go with that too. I also took some time to try to like figure out like the lacing, to try to get like, you know, just like a look like there's shoelaces on this. But I think it came out looking pretty alright, pretty good. I could probably use some more softening right here, so that way it doesn't have such jagged edges. But I think it looks pretty good. Got some time still. But yeah, I mean, honestly, what I think I want to add next is some stitches back here. A lot of shoes do have some stitching that goes from like back to this area all the way to the other side. So I think I should maybe add in some of that. But that's all I got for this part right here. Saving. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all that I have for this week's upload. So yeah.
Okay, looks really good. Walk cycle looks good. Yeah, this looks great. The shoes, these look like a little small in proportion, but yeah, that's great. And last but not least is Lena's.
Hello, so
The
here
robot
is
arm looks
my
really good.
walk cycle project. It's not done yet. I just wanted to show what I have so far. And I'll probably have to resubmit the project after I finish the shoe and substance painter and also finish the robot arm. But when I was doing this project, I noticed that this looks normal, but this blue thing looks a bit strange. So I'm wondering how I can fix that. And
did anyone else run into that? This? Oh, okay. I think I see what's going on. So all of the keyframes in your right foot line up. They all have the same beginning and same end. And your right foot looks good. On your left foot, you got this. See how these, whatever these parameters are slightly different length. They're like maybe just one frame longer than this one. That means that, you know, when you make it cyclic, this is going to loop at, I don't know, whatever this is, 38 frames, and these are going to be 39 frames. And so, you know, they'll line up eventually, but it will take a long time. And so they'll be slightly off each time, and that's what it's showing you there. It's showing you that that's going to result in the shape of the foot movement pattern actually changing. And so you want to fix it by probably just taking everything that's here and getting all this lined up in one thing.
The walk cycle starts out fine in the beginning.
One frame.
But once it continues, it starts to get a little bit strange. So
yeah, right. So the loops don't line up, right? It's like, you know, if you have a loop that's 4 and a loop that's 2, well, the 2 one happens twice for every 4, right? But if you got a loop that's 7 and a loop that's 9, well, that's not going to line up for a long time, right? It's going to go and then get strange in between.
And I did add the cyclic loop to all the keyframes. So I'm just wondering how I can fix that. So, and why the walk cycle is becoming a bit strange toward the end. And yeah, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, that's definitely what's happening there, is that you just need to look at what's going on here, and all, in order for the walk to work, the loop needs to be clean, meaning like everything has the same time, beginning time and same end time. Okay, great, Lena. Let me just point something out to you guys real quick. Substance, right? So we can grab stuff from substance source, substance community. Although, did you guys see that email about substance source? There's something about it about them not charging people anymore. Although I don't know if it's going to work with our school account. Did that just work? No. Okay, it's just taking a different offer. Okay, that doesn't work. I was hopeful for a second there. Substance sampler allows you to make your own substances a couple different ways. One, you can take a picture of anything and then convert that into a substance using it's like a combination machine learning algorithm that makes that work. You can use Firefly, which is Adobe's AI, generative AI thing, which essentially is just taking one step back. Use Firefly, it generates a picture of the texture that you would have taken a picture of, and then the same thing after that. It generates the material from that. Or you can use a base and filters to make your own substance just from those sort of building blocks there with a pretty, what I think, it's not a super complicated program, right? Substance Painter is really deep. There's a lot going on there. This is just like a much more simpler sort of situation. So let's do the last one first, like making something more and less from scratch. The in sampler here, the bottom left, there's a bunch of like base starting points. And so for instance, yeah, I'll just take this marble, and essentially you're just stacking stuff up over here. You can look at different preview geometries. So yeah, viewer settings. If you wanted to look at it as a cube or a rounded cube, or if it's going to be a piece of cloth, right? This has nothing to do with the substance. It just is how you're looking at it. Then over here, there we go. Actually, it's probably easier to see it over here. In the assets, filters, there's a whole list of stuff you can use here. Some of these are, let's do it in a list. There we go, that's easier to see. Some of these are much simpler than others, but there's your basic Photoshop manipulations here to colorize things and things like that. And then there's things that are more 3D oriented. Like, so for instance, like a cracks here. And so if I put the cracks over top of this, I have this. Each of these things is procedural. And so there's a little bit of overlap here. There's a lot of overlap between this and Substance Painter, right? Would I could get to the same result in many instances by sort of handcrafting one fill layer or whatever. But here, you know, it's more about just designing the actual substance, and some of the parameters here for a lot of what's happening. These are super useful, right? So this is this erode plus the cracks. Each filter thing has its own set of parameters, right? So crack color intensity, crack depth. The base layer itself usually has a couple different presets to get you sort of in the ballpark of what you would want. And then these things, these are themselves are substance, so you're kind of building a substance on top of a substance, right? The other one's useful here, just like moss. So moss height, moss spread. So this is, you know, not only useful for making something look like it was covered in moss. The displacement here, right? See how I can clearly identify it as displacement because it's sticking out like it is at this point? That's going to be a function of the shader settings always. And so the displacement quality, height level, height scale, right? So too much displacement always looks like this, right? It's always this stupidly spiky thing because it's pretty much just moving it in the Z direction of the normal. But it's always going to be in how you're looking at it, not necessarily in how the height of the displacement is not grossly encoded in the actual thing itself. But you could actually use this to make, you know, like other types of strange growths on something. And then this could be exported over here, export. They have a whole button, send to Substance Painter. As per usual, this doesn't always work. Oh, it worked. There we go. Right. And so now, right, it went there, and now I could just do this. Ta-da! Look at that. It makes it so easy to ruin Logan's shoes. Right? I can ruin these shoes with a technological ease not previously possible. So some overlap here, but in terms of like you're looking for some other substance and you can't really find something that's the starting point that you want, this is a great option to design it yourself. And if we wanted to look at it really quickly, so this, we can talk more about AI art later. I prefer the term machine learning. The short of it is that all of the stuff that Adobe provides was trained on the Adobe stock footage. So ethically, it's, you know, hopefully less compromised than just the general stuff that's out there that was trained on, we don't really know. No one knows. And so Adobe already owned all the rights to the stock footage. And so there's that. Anyways, what do we want to make? What kind of texture do we want? What?
Veins.
Veins? Okay, so like skin with veins. I think you only get so many of these in our regular Adobe account. The machine learning takes a lot of computation, right? So your mileage may vary, right? Is this a good texture image? Clearly not, right? Whereas like this, maybe. Even though I had it set to texture, I mean, let's try this. And so if I think we can just drag, can we just drag that here? Yeah. And so, there we go. Use as input image. What did they do here with this?
Do you have to put it on the bottom where it's like looking for a picture?
That didn't do it. They really like people to use this. You think they'd make it a little bit more obvious? Before, when I did this, it would just sort of always spit out the material. We got our new material. Cool.
The small square is input for you to generate more. So you probably would need to interact with the larger square.
Which small square?
The one that you're hovering over right now. You're using that.
Oh. From here. There we go. All right. Thank you. Yes. So drag from there to there. Thank you, Alicia. And so that gives us this window. And this window is the one you would get if you brought in your own picture that you took IRL, where it says, what do you want to do with this picture? And most of the time we want to do this, the image to material. And if you say import, it will import that, apply it as the base, and then do a bunch of stuff to sort of like automatically generate normal and height. This isn't gonna, I'm not super confident that this is gonna look good. But why is this not a good texture image? A couple reasons. There's shallow depth of field. Things are like out of focus in the background, not something you would typically want to bake into the texture. There's really, really harsh lighting, right? Which is ideally you want to have the pictures that you would take be neutral. And so if you take your own pictures here, this is not great. When I've done this before, it was a little bit if you told it to make rocks, like it was really good at making rocks. It seemed to be good at rocks. Whereas here, it was kind of meh. But you see that it generates this new material, and then this material, you can adjust the roughness on it, though none of that looks super great. And then, yeah, I mean, it's okay. I've seen demos where people get better results, but I feel like a lot of it's cherry-picked. This stuff also is not great for taking just a general picture of a texture. Why? We've got really hard shadows that are baked into the whole thing here. How about if we just told you to make a pattern? Techno wiring. Also, the that image was super washed out. Okay, so something like this might be interesting and useful. If we brought this in. Yeah, what it gives us by default is not great, but something like this would be could be a good height map. So for instance, if you were to use your brushed metal Yeah, I don't know. This definitely feels like not super ready for prime time. Adobe parameters. So your mileage may vary there. But in terms of bringing in an actual image or constructing something fairly simple from a pattern here, I think it's super useful in those regards. For instance, a procedural pattern rather than an AI generated one. There's some overlap here, but without having to dive way into Substance Designer, you can either send it directly, or if you hit the export button, you can just say export as, and it'll export it as a SBSAR file, which you could then manually just drag over here and be ready to go. So either one makes that work. Cool. Let's do this. Okay, so we brought this over. We were able to use our stamps to make this work, and we were able to do some more interesting things with the stamps with the anchor points, right? Let's bring this back over to make sure that that's not weird. If we use our export textures in our USD settings, just to make sure that it doesn't mess up any of our rigging, which it should not, but let's just confirm that. Downloads. Okay, awesome. This seems to preserve everything that we would want here in terms of our hierarchy, even after painting it and exporting it. The only problem is it's gigantic. We could solve that probably on import. Let's drag it in one more time over here. So, because this happened with the shoes, I don't remember it being super bad with the shoe we did on Monday. Was it really big? I don't. It was big? Okay. Anyways, we can do it here. Let's say 0.1, 1/10 of what it was. Now we'll import it. There we go. That's usable. And then if we, so that's the only thing I've changed on all of the import settings. And so if we just had a sunlight here so we could see what we're doing. That's great. Turn this up. Okay. And here, that's good. With the shoes, we were able to fix it really quickly, but if we had to rebuild the hierarchy here, that would not be super useful with this export method. I think we're okay. Or wait, are there two of them? Did I just do it twice? Let's do that cleanly. Okay, here we go. Bring it in. Say it's at 1/10. And there we go. There we go. There's not multiples in here now. So this is fine. Good. All right, that's what it looked like, but it wasn't strange. I just don't think I parented this correctly before when I was doing it. Yeah. Control P. Okay, so you guys should be fine because yours is parented correctly before you even sent it over there. And now if you bring it back, everything should be cool, and it is. All right. Okay, so that works. We're good, right? We're able to paint it, do all of our cool stuff from Substance Painter, output the USD, and the USD is in the right configuration. I just don't think mine was, you know, I was just sort of freewheeling it and it wasn't correctly configured previously. So we're good there, which only leaves our tentacle. Let's look at that real quick. So in this case, we're already rigged and everything, right? So if we export the tentacle over here, if we just bring that over as the FBX, under tentacle paint, make sure we say selected objects so we don't get all the other stuff. Apply transformation. Export, and if we bring that in over here, okay, so we have this with the automatic UV unwrapping in the tentacle settings. The thing that's going to be different here, which may be useful later on, is the thickness, which we haven't used in any of the other things we've done, not with the shoe or with the robot arm, clearly. So if we bake this, it's one of the other maps that we'll have here. If we look at that one by itself, let's say return to painting, right? Where is it thick and where is it thin, right? Again, mapped onto brightness and darkness. So this is something where it's one of the instances where you could use the change in value of the map here in order to generate color, right? So we did this with just random texture, right? We took random texture, which is black and white, and then what do we use to make it some sort of color previously? Like with the gradient effect. Did I show you guys that? I don't think so. No? Okay. So fill layer, here's the principle, right? We've got this, we got this, any sort of gradient pattern, or black and white pattern, right? So we'll use these. Like so, right? So it's black and white pattern, but I would like it to be like orange and yellow or something like that. And so right click, filter, and then gradient. The gradient allows you to map the black and white onto any colors that you can choose, and you get to control how many colors there are as well. Did I show you this or no? I'm trying to remember. I don't think so. I think it was the other class. You guys look like I didn't say anything about this before. Okay, so let's assume not. So you can choose, it's a way we can colorize any sort of black and white information, right? And you could use anything to drive this, right? And so in the color here, we have this pattern. We could colorize just sort of general noise with like so, or take one of these noises like that, right? That's kind of interesting, but it's clearly being, how is it being projected? UV. Remember, UV is the default for everything, whereas like this would clearly require us to probably change this up to triplanar, which in this case sort of like straightens that out in this instance. There's another good filter here. After the gradient, I could right click, and in order to mess something up, warp is essentially noise. And so if you have warp filter on the color here, now you see that this is kind of grainy, but there's the intensity, and then they don't have the scale, which is usually how you would see this for noise, which is weird. It's this multiplier, and if you bring that up, you can sort of make it more of a blur it. There we go. That's more of, sort of distorting, right? So what started off as sort of stripes now gives us, some way more strange pattern here. But this would work for colorizing it here. This would work for the color channel, but also you could use this same warp filter on any black and white stuff that came from any other channel, any other texture here. A few things. This UV map, maybe not ideal, but it's giving us what we want. I mean, we have something that works here. The way to make this maybe interact more with the actual shape of this thing would be, instead of using some random noise, would be to use the thickness map. And so if you come over here, And instead of looking at the resources, or yeah, in resources, if you just type the name of the mesh map that you want, the thickness comes in there. And so now we can, map this in a way. I'm going to turn off the warp for a second and come back down to the gradient. And if I start playing with the slider positions here, it's weird that it goes back to that there. Let's come back and look at that. Yeah, it is the thickness. Okay. We should just be seeing this, because we took the thickness and we threw it onto the color. There's nothing else strange happening. Let me just do it again with the layer to make sure there's nothing wrong. There we go. All right, something was weird. Right, so now I'm back to looking at the material. That's the thickness. Now if we apply the filter with the gradient, and some of our own colors, and adjusting the distribution of those. So you can see how this technique is more useful for this than it would be for the robot, right? The robot's not going to have, the change in thickness for the robot is going to be kind of, mechanical looking, whereas with something with like these sort of smooth-ish profiles, the thickness map just has like more interesting gradient information. Mostly here, like instead of making it look like a Technicolor tentacle, I would, from an artistic standpoint, color pick the same thing, and then dial this in like so, and then start adding some slight variations to the other ones, maybe with the hue, right? And so something like that, and come in here, and maybe a little on that side, and this just gives us this kind of more naturalistic look for what's going on there. Does that make sense? Right? So using the thickness map and then mapping it onto some sort of colors in order to give us this. Let's get this, see if we can get this looking acceptably slimy, right? So we want the, this is primarily just going to be color. And so in order to avoid confusion with other stuff, if I know I'm just doing one thing on a layer, I'll turn off the other channels just to not have some sort of stacking issue as things build up there. And then just, this is just going to be the color. And then above this, no color. And let's just deal with the roughness here. And so if we bring that down, we can start to make this shinier and then start to give it some sort of height, right? So some sort of noise here. If we put something like that in the height, actually, let's try this maybe. So if I put the cells into the height, you know, by default, it's super very hard edges. We could blur. First of all, we could make it smaller. So the balance here and the noise parameter scale, there we go. And then there's some options here. You could just add a blur to the height. So base noise plus some level of blur starts to give me like that surface level tension for what's happening. Just some sort of irregularity that's not there in the actual model itself. Another thing to experiment with is right-click filter. Yeah, this is the new effect I was talking about earlier. Mask outline, which kind of does like a blurring thing, but in an interesting way. Let me turn off the regular blur. And so we just have this. And make sure it's only on the height. And let's see here, adjust the threshold. Maybe it's only going to work on the mask. That doesn't make any sense, but that might be it. No. All right, let's go back to our regular blur there. Now, the subsurface scattering that we did to make it look see-through, that's not, that's like the displacement is kind of like at the end of the render chain, but we can preview subsurface scattering over here in the shader settings under subsurface scattering parameters. Enable. There's one of these things. You can't have both of them. Yeah, we can't have interior turned on and enable, so we have enable turned on. Okay, so when we get that into play, that'll do something there. And let's make the underside different. So we can add another one here. And add a mask. And here, I might use something kind of soft. With the brush, flow is like the accumulation of the transparency. And so if you turn this down, you have something where you need to, for these sort of softer effects, you need to go over it more often in order for it to sort of take effect. And so these kind of like, I don't want it to be a straight line from, the underside to the other part. And so by turning the flow down there, it just makes painting this a lot more forgiving. If it's turned up, like it's kind of very, very sharp and very, it's not just the hardness of the brush, it's sort of like how much more it is like you're kind of like spraying it on and accumulating it. And let's try that in combination with something else. So if we add now, since it's a smart material, it's not going to let us drag that on there. But we already painted the mask. We could just simply add a black mask and then copy mask and remove mask, or you could do it with an anchor point if you wanted to, if you had to read it more than twice, or more than once rather. But if we had to am I blind? Am I not seeing copy mask? A copy layer. No. We'll add the anchor point. And then up here in the actual mask, add fill. There we go. I think this is the opposite of what we want, in which case we can add filter, invert. There we go. So here, when we export it, rather than having to replace the mesh, you can bring the USD back over and just apply the material to the existing animated mesh, right? With all of the animation on there. Everybody with me? So, with the robot, I would say explore a bunch of stuff using, the smart masks that come from the curvature map information. For the tentacle, I would say explore some options that originate from our either nooks and crannies, which is going to be ambient occlusion, or thickness map. right? Which is going to sort of map the color across the different thicknesses of the actual object there. But allows it to get, a lot more texture than just what we were doing with the subdivision surface. Later, once you apply it in Blender, you can still dial in some see-throughness with the subsurface scampling. It's not subsurface scampering, it's subsurface sampling, right? There's a lot of S's there. Subdivision surface and subsurface scattering. We can still bring that in just by simply choosing that material once you import the entire mesh. No need to re-rig or reanimate. Here, we're just simply painting it and bringing it in at this point. Make sense? All right, so we're gonna have some of you guys already have the shoes painted in the walking video. That's great. That's gonna be the stuff for Wednesday, right? So for Wednesday, I'll have you guys make shorter videos for this. And we probably, because we only got one day next week, when we wanna do some other stuff, we'll just post those on Discord so everybody can see what everybody's looking at. Because, yeah, just to free up some time so that all of Wednesday isn't eaten up with that. Sound good? But we'll keep the Tuesday deadline. We just won't have a Monday live stream or, nothing's happening on Monday. School's, like the campus is closed. Everybody with me? Okay. Awesome. Super.